Bailey, did you just see a glitch in the Matrix?
Maybe. She's worried. Speaking of glitches in the Matrix.
God, this movie.
The Matrix is something else.
It really is.
Like, and it,
especially when the first time you see it.
See, that's what I was about to talk about. How, like, because we watched it last night, and it was that realization of, like, man, it's still just as impactful today. Mm-hmm. You know, like, I hadn't seen it in, I don't know, 3 or 4 years, and I was thinking, like, oh, how well does it, and it still holds up perfectly fine.
Yeah, visually it's still really good.
Which is surprised the hell out of me. Really, it did. Like,
that being said, I was not shocked. It's only probably been a couple months since the last time I saw The Matrix.
Oh, really?
Yeah.
Okay.
I watch this movie pretty regularly. Like, anytime it's on, or anytime it was on Netflix, or anytime.
I
mean, I don't watch it constantly, but like,
you would put it on.
Yeah.
Because it's it's an awesome movie to watch.
Mm-hmm.
It's also like, for a movie that got such high praise for, like, its visuals and its fight sequences. It's also a movie that's, like, it is such a cool and honestly original storyline.
Yeah.
That when you first watch it, you really did, like, it's not that you were confused. It really was just like, oh wow, like, it really started.
Who thought of this?
Yeah. Well, I mean, it's honestly, like, kind of, it's an age-old kind of philosophy of, like, what do you perceive as real? You know, like that whole aspect. But they just made it they just created their own little science fiction story about it and updated it for the 21st century, and truly, I think, made, like, a science fiction masterpiece. Like, the Wachowskis did such a damn good job with this movie. Because they took those philosophies and then added really, really dope action sequences behind it.
Mm-hmm.
And the end result is something that still holds up.
Yeah. The first Matrix, in my opinion, is probably top 5 science fiction movies ever made.
And like, I'm not going to argue with you about that, because it's, like, a valid point. I mean just the whole, like, do you know how much of our vocabulary now, like, we were just talking about deja vu, like, before we started filming, we were talking about deja vu, and how now whenever I experience deja vu, or someone says, like, I just had a case of deja vu, my first thought is, like, it's a glitch in the Matrix.
And if you're not thinking it, someone else is
also thinking it.
Yeah,
or going to say it. But it's true. Like, I think what they were able to do with this truly was special. And
because talk about it, it's still, if this movie has never been made, that's an out there concept,
right?
And it's even now how far we've come, technologically speaking. Like, in 1999, this was a really far out there concept,
right? I mean, and you have to give credit to, like, Joel Silver, the producer, who, I mean, he's had that reputation before, but of really letting the Wachowskis, like, no, just do what your vision is. Because they came to him and apparently were very passionate about this idea. And the only thing that he asked them to do was to really add some dialogue to certain things he knew the general audience would not quite understand. Mm-hmm. And he basically told them to add some dialogue so it would explain to the audience what certain things meant. But he did, like, he wanted it to be this story and not toned down in any way. He wanted it, like, this specific way. And it's, like, it's a true case of, like, thank God.
Yeah.
Because if it was toned down to, like, well, we need to make this for, like, the general audience to understand perfectly fine, it's like, no, like,
I was always surprised how many people talk about the first time they saw this, how confused they were. Because I thought they do a pretty good job of explaining what's taking place.
We've talked about it, because when this came out when I was 6 years old.
I was 10.
You were 10, right? all I remember was growing up. I didn't see it until I was about 11 or 12, and literally.
See, I remember seeing it very early on when it first came out.
Like when it first came out?
Yeah. I didn't see it in theaters, but I remember when it came out on DVD that I saw it.
Like it's honestly they
Almost,
do.
Because I remember my friend was like, Matrix came out today. I got it. There's our next door neighbor, and he was like, "Oh, you want to come over and watch? Yeah, you want to come over and watch the Matrix?" And he had a huge those huge
big screen in the basement.
Yeah, and it was like it was in a big box, but I mean it was like the size of a wall.
It was huge, yeah.
And I was like, "Yeah, I'll come over and watch the Matrix." He's like, "It's gonna look awesome on the TV in the basement." I was like, "Yes, it is." And we went over there and watched it.
And it's funny how some people really look at this film. And they're just like, they're so focused on the fight sequences, which, by the way, are amazing. Like, you still watch them now. And, I mean, we were talking about when we were watching it.
There's so many where you could go, which one's your favorite? And you're like, I don't know.
I mean, not to get too sidetracked.
Well, I mean, when he finds out
Well, that's more satisfying. For me, it's when he's in the train station with.
Well, to me, that's
agents.
all one.
The
last 10 minutes.
Once Trinity.
Once Trinity gets taken,
and it's when it's
taken
Agent
out
Smith versus Neo.
I consider that whole sequence and then running through the streets and then.
Oh, see,
that's all one thing to me.
And then it's kind of that like uplifting feeling when he realizes.
And then I consider the whole breaking out Morpheus. I consider
You're
that
right, man. But they're two different kinds because breaking out Morpheus is like a gunfight that is so insane. Like so many bullets are used in that scene alone when they're in the lobby, the hotel lobby. It's awesome. It still looks great. That's another thing is that like for today's standards. It still looks really pretty good. And we were talking about it last night. So many films tried to do and copy what The Matrix did. Now, I'm not saying The Matrix like invented this. Like there's a lot of
bullet time thing.
But the whole bullet time thing was a pretty relatively fresh idea. And The Matrix did it, and then like everyone else tried to do it. Yeah. And when everyone else did it, it was like cheesy and bad. But The Matrix,
even Shrek had calls.
They did.
Yeah. I mean, there's.
But that's like the wire foo where they would like, almost like it would freeze in midair.
Yeah.
And they
well, I mean, it's kind of.
But that's the other thing is that the Wachowskis literally took philosophy and their love, I'm assuming, of like kung fu or John Woo movies.
Yeah.
I mean, because John Woo basically invented kind of the whole bullet time bit, but this really brought it to like an American audience, and they did it so well. I mean, in this first Matrix, it holds up. It really is really really good.
Yeah,
and it's also
you think about it, there's not a lot of weak points or things to poke holes in.
Well, I mean, you can, I guess, if you really wanted to try, but it's like, but going back to your comment about how some people discussed how like, oh, it was so confusing. It's really not. Morpheus lays it out very clearly.
Yeah.
When Neo is finally brought to the real world,
mm-hmm.
and Morpheus brings him into what's it called, where it's like the empty white space, and he's giving him the whole history of what has happened, what's going on, what the Matrix is, what everything. It's like
you're a battery. The Matrix is a computer program
for everyone else.
Everyone so that being used as a battery.
So that they're satisfied with not being a battery. They're satisfied with living in this pretend world.
Yeah, and they never know that they're a battery.
Right. They think that's their life.
Yeah.
And it's all about taking the red pill and being able to know what is truth and being able to make your own decisions, and it's not and it's like, but that's what I'm saying. It's like he spells it out very clearly to where I'm like, I don't understand how it's so confusing. I understand.
I know. I mean, a lot of people had that complaint.
Yeah, they were like, it's really confusing. But then they would always finish like the fight scenes are so cool.
Yeah.
And I remember even at like 11, I remember thinking like, there's so much more here than just these fight scenes.
There's a lot.
And honestly, like it's a movie that it's not that it grows on me, but it's like every time I watch it, at no point am I pick up new things every now and then, but more importantly, I'm like, in no way is this getting worse. Like I don't necessarily get tired of it.
No.
The only thing that
every time I watch it, I go, this is just impressive.
It's good. Yeah, it's good. It's so good. One complaint is more of just like the '90s style was crazy, and
it
this
was something.
And this movie
contributed to it.
Oh,
and this is
the whole leather duster jackets, like that whole phase. It to me, it only looked good on one person, and that's Keanu Reeves. And anytime else I see someone wearing it, I'm like, what's going on here? Like, what are you doing? But it still, that's like such a minor complaint because the Wachowskis clearly had this like style they were going. It's like these were hackers.
Yeah.
Like these are these computer type people. This is the clothing they would wear. It's that leather.
Mm-hmm.
It looks like that feels so uncomfortable. But no, that's just one minor complaint. But besides that, man, like, what would you give this? I mean, I personally, I wouldn't put this, like, I wouldn't say it's like perfect, but I definitely give this like an A.
Oh yeah, I mean I'm gonna go as far as to say this is an A+.
Okay, that's I totally get it.
This is in the upper echelon of movies. For me, like there's not much.
It goes back to like this was a touchstone movie. Like this is a movie people will always reference. They'll look back to, and everyone is aware of what the Matrix is.
That being said, the rest of the Matrix universe, 2 and 3, are.
Are you supposing that they kind of bring down the first one, or is it more of like? Because for me, I say, if they had left it with one...
To put it this way, I've seen the second and third one both once, and I have never watched them again.
Interesting.
And in a way, I do think it brings down... Because it made me think less of the first one. I was like, oh, this is where they were going with this? But if you take those away and pretend those never happened, and just watch the first one...
The first one as a standalone movie is so good.
It might be, like... In my opinion, it might be in my conversation is one of the greatest movies ever made. That's how highly I think of what.
See, I don't know if I'd do that, but it is so good. And another testament, and it's not. This is kind of like on a macro level. This movie's 2 hours and 20 minutes, and it flies by.
It feels like it's like an hour and 15 minutes.
Like we watched it last night, and like it was one of those things. It was over. I was like, God, it's over.
Mm-hmm.
Like they do such a good job pacing wise.
What's funny is you finish watching this and you're like, I want to see more of this. And then I saw the second, third one. And I was like, no, I did not want to see more. I should have just restarted. Who like if you had to pick a standout performance? I actually really liked Lawrence Fishburne.
Lawrence Fishburne was great as Morpheus, and I was reading like trivia, and they said obviously the classic piece of trivia is that Will Smith was first approached. Mm-hmm. And Will Smith, even going back, was like, I was too immature at the time to realize what they were trying to do.
Yeah. And,
but something, on Wikipedia, this is where I read it, was that it was supposed to be Will Smith and Val Kilmer. Val Kilmer as Morpheus. Val Kilmer would have been interesting.
It would have been.
I think Lawrence Fishburne did.
The more famous rumor around
this was Morpheus. A rumor that I had heard this.
And this is real. This is one of the roles Sean Connery famously turned down.
He turned down. But then when you watch like the kung fu scene where Morpheus
it's like, what was the movie then?
Yeah, like was that
or
scene
what was Morpheus
where
then?
Morpheus was teaching Neo about like the whole famous like stop trying to hit me and hit me.
Yeah.
That whole scene, I can't see Sean Connery doing that.
No.
And Morpheus played that off extremely well.
They were famous for all those people had to go through all that training to make the movie.
That's what's crazy too.
Sean Connery at that point was like in his late 70s.
No. I would say like early 70s, maybe late 60s.
Okay, but still.
He's still old. Yeah, he's older, and it's like he wouldn't have gone through that because the stunt coordinator, like he made these crazy demands.
No, he was in his 70s because he was in his 30s when he was making Bond.
That's fair.
And that was 60s.
That was 62 was Dr. No. So 99 was the Matrix. Yeah. I mean, yeah, he...
Late 60s.
Late 60s, early 70s.
Yeah, okay.
So, but yeah, like the stunt coordinator, he had all these crazy demands just because he was like, they'll never do these demands. And the Wachowskis were like, yeah, okay. Mm-hmm. Because they were so dedicated to getting this movie like made correctly. And Keanu, Lawrence Fishburne, Carrie-Anne Moss, and Hugo Weaving all went through crazy amounts of training. And that, going back to I loved Hugo Weaving.
Mm-hmm.
He's so good. Great. He is so good as that Agent Smith, where he's like a computer, but he's also he's so villainous, and you hate him. Like he's great.
He's always Agent Smith, and everything he does. Even
it's
in
sad because you watch him in
Captain America, you go, oh, that's Agent Smith.
But that's so sad because you watch him and he's like, everything he does, he crushes. He's Hugo Weaving.
V for Vendetta, you don't even see his face and you go...
Oh, really? See, I disassociate the two.
No, I do. As soon as I hear him, I'm like, Mr. X.
Oh, Kyle. No, that's
Hugo Weaving, and as much as I love that movie, Hugo Weaving is always... gonna be that character for me. Okay. I saw this movie. He had a very impressionable age. I guess.
But no, I'm so. I mean, it's being The Matrix. It's been 20 years since it came out. It's being re-released in Dolby theaters for the next week across the country.
So that's August 30th.
August 30th to September 5th
mm-hmm.
is I just checked movie times. But yeah. If you haven't seen it in a while, definitely rewatch it. It's so worth it. It's so
great.
Good.
I will say though, they're re-releasing it and it's not enhanced in any way, is it?
No, Dolby. I mean, it's in a Dolby theater, so it's like it's not IMAX, but it is. It's Dolby theaters are. It's like
point being, it still looks. It looks great.
Trust me, it'll look.
I don't think there's any. It's not like. I don't think there's been any remastering.
Oh, you mean restoration?
Yeah.
No, and there's no like, from my understanding, there's no like added scenes. It's just the 1999 version of The Matrix. But yeah, if you do have a chance to go see it, we would recommend seeing it, especially with somewhat of a slower weekend.
Yeah.
So that's our take on 1999's The Matrix.
Catch you later,
I guess. Mr. Anderson.